Good morning, boys and girls. Happy Friday. I realized yesterday that I never read Wayside School. I was too excited to watch your wax museum projects, which were awesome. Totally knocked my socks off. I know that's not what you and Mr. Dixon had planned originally, but it was amazing. And I love that it was the little videos you did and the props that you had, and your some of you were able to have like almost like a costume or like a white jacket or something like that kind of signified your career. And I know some of you weren't able to because it's hard to go out right now to go to get to a store. But you guys really, you wouldn't have known that maybe you didn't get your project to where you wanted it to be because it was amazing. You are amazing. Okay. So today is Virtual Spirit Week. It is Aloha Weekend, Aloha Friday. So if you have anything Hawaiian or beachy even, no bathing suits, please. Okay, send me a picture. The weekend is here. Okay, last weekend of April, Neville is here. This one, he is something else, aren't you, Neville? Yeah. Just know that he does this when I talk to other people via Zoom and stuff like that. He hops up on the table and needs to be on my lap too. It's not just you. So today, Neville, we're going to read Wayside School. Are you ready? Are you excited? Chapter 21 is called Open Wide. Where are they? And what does this have to do with Wayside School? This cat. What are you doing? I'm trying to work. I'll be back. The good news. Jason got to leave school early. Bad news. He had a dentist appointment. I'll never eat candy again, he promised to the tooth god as he headed down the stairs, and I'll brush my teeth after every meal, I promise. Even if it's just a snack, I'll bring my toothbrush to school. Just please don't let her find any cavities. I've heard this song before, answered a voice inside of his head. Every time you go to the dentist, it's the same thing, but then a week later, you're eating candy and forgetting to brush your teeth. This time I really mean it, Jason promised. Too late, said the voice. I've made that promise too. An hour later, Jason was lying on his back in the dentist chair. Open, said the doctor. His dentist's name was Dr. Payne, Payne. Pain is like pain, like I have a pain in my shoulder. She had long fingers and even longer fingernails. Jason opened his big mouth. He had the second biggest mouth in the class. Wider, said Dr. Payne. Jason stretched his mouth until his cheeks hurt. That's good, said Dr. Payne. Now it's just a little bit wider. The veins in Jason's neck bulged out as he stretched his mouth even wider. His eyes watered and his throat was dry. Okay, just hold it like that, said Dr. Payne. She turned on the sucking machine and put the tube in Jason's mouth. The machine made a gagging noise as it sucked out the last drop of moisture. As Dr. Payne poked around his teeth, she said tisk tisk and oh my several times. So how do you like school, she asked. Oh, said Jason. What grade are you in? Oh, said Jason. Well, just remember, said Dr. Payne, it's very important to always listen to your teachers and do whatever they say. She poked a tooth with a long pointed dentist tool. Ah! Jason screamed in agony. Did that hurt? Asked Dr. Payne. Jason shook his head. If he told her it hurt, she might think it was a cavity. And if she couldn't find it herself, he certainly wasn't going to tell her about it. Are you sure? Said Dr. Payne. She poked the same spot. This time, Jason didn't make a sound. Tears and sweat dripped down his face, because it did hurt. The receptionist came into the room. Yes, said Dr. Payne. Jason was glad for the break. Kendall's mother is on the phone, said the receptionist. She refuses to pay her bill. What? Exclaimed Dr. Payne. How dare! She says you pulled out the wrong tooth. Give me the phone, shouted Dr. Payne. The receptionist handed it to her. This is Dr. Payne. What do you mean you're not paying your bill? Well then, just bring Kendall back in here. And I'll just pull that one too. I'll pull them all, but you still have to pay me. Your lawyer? I don't care what your lawyer said. You can tell your lawyer to rub a monkey's tummy. You heard me. Rub a monkey's tummy with your head. She slammed down the phone. Jason looked at the diploma hanging in the wall. Before the dentist got married, her name was Jane Smith. His big mouth opened even wider because he couldn't believe he found her. That person that Mrs. Drizzle drove Mrs. Drizzle crazy. So we're going to continue to read about Jane Smith. Is that okay with you, Nev? This is not a good time. All right. You want to... Oh my gosh, this cat. I can't. You are something. All right. Maybe he'll like being on my lap. So Jane Smith. So Jane Smith is the student that drove Mrs. Drizzle crazy that was all in the blue notebook. And she owed Mrs. Drizzle several homework assignments. I keep a similar book. I'll find you. Okay. I found Jane Smith, Jason told Stephen the next morning when he got to school. You better tell Dee Dee, said Stephen. They hurried across the playground. A whistle blew. No running, ordered Mr. Lewis, the professional playground supervisor. Now I want both of you to go back to the edge of the blacktop and walk this time. The boys went back the way they came, then they came back the way they went. Dee Dee was sitting on a bench. She had been benched by Lewis for excessive noise-making. I found Jane Smith, Jason whispered as he walked past her. Dee Dee and Jason entered the classroom together. Mrs. Drizzle was seated behind her desk. As they passed in front of her, Dee Dee stopped and said, Did you have a nice time at the dentist yesterday, Jason? Yes, Dee Dee, said Jason. It was very nice. I wonder if we have the same dentist, said Dee Dee. What is your dentist's name? Her name is Dr. Payne, said Jason, but that hasn't always been her name. It hasn't? Asked Dee Dee. Oh, no, said Jason. Before she was married, her name was Jane Smith. Jane Smith, asked Dee Dee. Is that spelled Janesmith? Yes, that's how you spell Jane Smith, said Jason. But like I said, that's not her name anymore. Her name is Dr. Payne. She works at the dentist's office at 124 Garden Street. They took their seats. Now I show you something. See down here, it's got these three asterisks. Okay. There's a reason that an author does this. When an author does this, or there's a gap between paragraphs, the author is showing that even though it's not a new, here, up here actually. Okay, see how there's a line here? The author is showing that some time has passed. That time could be a couple hours, it could be a couple days, a couple weeks. It doesn't matter. Usually you'll find clues in the following paragraphs. Late that afternoon, there you go, Dr. Payne finished work and walked out of her office. It had been a good day. She had drilled 25 teeth. She made $60 for each tooth she drilled. 25 times $60 is $1,500. Not bad for a day's work. Of course, not all the teeth have really been cavities, but how would any of her patients find out? She got into her fancy silver and black sports radio and drove away. She sang along with the radio. She didn't even notice the old beat-up green station wagon in her rearview mirror. She lived in a mansion next to the lake. There was a stone wall around her house. She pressed a button in her car, and an iron gate opened. The gate closed behind her as she headed up the long and winding driveway. A moment later, the old green station wagon stopped and parked next to the gate. A woman got out, walked around the back, and opened the tailgate, the hatch door. She pulled out a ladder. She set the ladder up against the wall. Under her arm, she carried an old blue notebook. This cat. He's driving me crazy. Dr. Payne's butler handed her a drink. The cook was making dinner. Dr. Payne's dog, cat, and husband were waiting for her in the den. Her dog's name was Brussels, and her cat's name was Sprouts. She petted them both. Her husband's name was Sham. She petted him, too. Hi, darling, he said. How was your day? I made $1,500, said Jane. They hugged and kissed. They loved each other, but they loved money even more. Then they had a dinner by candlelight as they watched the sun set over the lake. After dinner, they sat out on the deck under the stars. Sprouts lay purring on Jane's lap. Brussels lay sat faithfully at her side. Life was perfect. I love you, darling, she said, petting Sprouts. And I love you too, said Jim. I was talking to the cat, said Jane. The butler stepped out onto the deck. Excuse me, madame, but there's an elderly woman in the yard. Jane's long fingernails dug into her cat's neck. Are we acting this out, Neville? Okay. The butler stepped out. I wonder how she got past the gate, said Jim. I don't know, said the butler. Perhaps she's probably hungry. Perhaps I can give her some leftover. No, shouted Jane. Get rid of her. Let me have a look, said Sham. He followed the butler back into the house. He returned a moment later. Darling, you'll never guess who's here. One of your former teachers. Isn't that just the sweetest? Jane screamed. She jumped to her feet. Sprouts flew out of her lap and into the hot tub. What's wrong? Said asked Sham. I told you to get rid of her, shouted Jane. She kicked her dog out of the way, then climbed over the railing and jumped off the deck to the ground 15 feet below. Mrs. Giselle came out on the deck. You can't get away from me, young lady, she hollered. Jane hurt her ankle pretty badly when she hit the ground. It was either sprained or broken. She lay on the ground in agony as she looked up at her former teacher. You have homework to do, said Mrs. Giselle, looking down at her. Jane's face twisted with pain. Rub a monkey's tummy, she shouted. Then she struggled to her feet. She had a suitcase stashed in the boathouse, just in case this ever happened. She hobbled to it, grabbed it, then limped down to the lake, dragging her suitcase behind her. Mrs. Giselle hurried down the steps on the other side of the deck. Jane groaned as she threw a suitcase into a motorboat. Then she pulled herself aboard and started the engine. Darling, come back, Sham shouted from across the deck as he watched the boat sputter across the water. Mrs. Giselle climbed into an old rowboat. I'll find you, Jane Smith, she shouted into the darkness. You can run, but you can't hide. Jane's voice echoed back across the black water. Rub a monkey's tummy with your head. And neither of them was ever seen again. So once again, the 30th story has found himself without a teacher. Uh-oh. All right. So if you're around today, about 11 o'clock in your Google Classroom, for the third grade grammar science writing thing, I put up a Zoom. Okay, we're going to have a Zoom. If you're available, you don't have to come, but I'd like to see you if you're available. And if not, aloha weekend. Have a great day. Bye, boys and girls.